All of England here, and in today's video we are going to be taking a look at the Battleship Captain skills. Now, a while back I did take a look at the public test of the new Captain skills that went live, I think it was around a month ago or so, where you just got to try out for a week the actual new Captain skills system, but unfortunately because quite a few of these servers were down at the time, I wasn't unable to actually download it until pretty late on. However, what I did say in that video, as well as actually sort of giving my impressions, was that I would also go through each of the sort of classes, so battleship, cruiser, destroyer and aircraft carrier, and go through individually sort of their unique skills. You know, if I did it all in one video it'd be a very long video, and it's probably a good chance that people only really want to see one or two classes maybe, and I'd rather do those in separate videos where I can go into a lot more depth. Now, with this one, what I'm going to be doing is, as you can probably see at the moment, I've got a sort of different spreadsheet here to what Wargaming's got. So I've taken Wargaming's information, sort of put it and formatted it into my own spreadsheet, and then also, as well as sort of going through this here with going through each tier, I've also made up a few, I guess, speculative captain builds, which you could go for, just sort of general builds. Obviously, those can change at any point, as you know, if they do make any alterations to these, then obviously these may not be so, I guess, relevant in the future. However, as it currently stands, I'm just sort of putting these out here as to what you could sort of, I guess, build with what we got currently. So the first thing I'll just quickly mention is that if you want to go to a sort of specific thing or a specific point in the video, you can see all the timestamps down in the description if there's anything specific you want to see. However, what I'm going to start off with is actually go through each of these skills, what their actual, their name, their description, and what effect that has on you and your ship. So firstly, we're going to look at the tier 1 skills, which means these are skills that cost 1 skill point, and obviously this will go down all the way down to 4. And the first one, we have got Loader. So what this does, it reduces the time taken to switch shell type if all main battery guns are loaded, and the base effect is time taken to switch shell type is reduced by 50%. Now, there's also another section here which is the enhanced effect, which is effectively if you've got a sort of special commander, so if you've got, say, the Burt Dunkirk, well, you know, one of the Dunkirks, or any sort of national special captain, then this is what this enhanced effect does. So rather than 50% to switch a shell type when you're fully loaded, it actually goes to 75%. Now for the next one, Pyrotechnist, so this increases the chance of high explosive to set a fire, and the base effect means that, you know, the main battery high explosive shells will, have an additional 1% chance to cause a fire, and same goes for the secondaries. However, if you've got a special commander, then the enhanced effect will be 1.5% on both main batteries and secondaries. For consumables specialist, this will reduce the reload time of set consumables, and those consumables are the fighter, the spotting aircraft, the defensive AA fire, the main battery reload booster, as well as the torpedo reload booster. And that effect will reduce the reload time by 10%. However, if you've got a special captain, that reduces it by 12.5%. So if you do rely quite heavily on these sort of consumables, then that's going to be quite good to have. And the next one here is the Emergency Repair Specialist, which reduces the reload time of the Damage Control Party and Repair Party consumables. So this would be something that would be quite good if you're going for either just a general survivability build, or it could also just be something you'd really want to have generally anyway, depending on what build you're going for. And the base effect is that it will reduce the reload time of both consumables by 3%. However, if you've got the special captain, then that will be reduced by 4%. Now, Alarming, this used to, well, yeah, I can't actually remember what it used to be called now, but it's effectively, it's just if someone does shoot at you from, a distance greater than 4.5 kilometers, it would just sort of give you a warning where you'd usually have the sort of the spotted indicator of sort of an incoming fire. So there aren't really any effects here, so I've just put NA on both of those, as it just sort of tells you when a shot's coming towards you, which I guess it's quite good, especially when you're, I guess, newer to the game, but I mean, any more experienced players probably won't need this. Then for the last tier 1 skill, it is the Maintenance Specialist, which reduces the risk of the main turret's torpedo tubes, steering gears and engine from becoming incapacitated. And the base effect is that it's the chance of being incapacitated is reduced by 30%, but if you've got the special commander, then that is 45%. Now then, moving on to the tier 2 skills here. So now we've got Gunner, which increases the main battery traverse speed, and the base effect is it increases the traverse speed by 20%. However, if you've got the enhanced effect, then that will be by 25%, which is very good. And speaking of things that are very good, is one thing that really helps my channel is if you drop a like, because it allows other people to really find my channel, so that would be really good if you could drop a like and possibly a comment for anything you want me to cover in the future. But anyway, we'll carry on with going through these skills. Now for threshing, this increases the armor penetration of high explosive shells at the expense of fire chance. So this used to be the IFHE, and it has actually been reduced. Well, it's not changed what it does, it's just really been renamed here. And what it does is increases the armor penetration capacity of both main battery and secondary HE shells by 25%. But you do have to pay a price of, you basically lose a half of your fire chance being set, but that's without modifiers. So let's say you've got, say, a 10% chance of setting fire and you get threshing, then the chance of setting fire will be set by 5%. But then if you've got, say, some of the actual flags which increase your fire chance by 1% each, so that's an additional 2%, you'll actually still have 7. So it can somewhat be mitigated, but it really does depend on what ship you want to try that with. Now for the next one, Consumables Expert, this increases the action time of select consumables, and those consumables are Hydroacoustic Search, Surveillance Radar, Smoke Generator and Engine Boost. And the base effect of that is that you get a sort of 10% extra additional action time with those, but if you've got the enhanced, then that will increase it by 12.5%. Then the next one, which is Vigilance, so I don't actually think that's even been renamed, which is just, it allows you to spot torpedoes earlier. So yeah, extends the torpedo acquisition range even with the Hydroacoustic Search consumable active, and when the torpedo lookout system upgrade is mounted. And the basic effect will be that you'll be able to see torpedoes 25% further, and if you got the enhanced, then that will be increased by 35%. Now, Argoside, this has actually increased by a point, so that's something that is somewhat more of an expensive skill point here, which just gives you an indication of how many opponents are actually looking at you. So, you know, usually you've got a thing when you're detected, it just says, yep, you've been detected. And if you've got this, it will just sort of say how many people are actually looking at you at the moment if you are detected. And again, that can really just sort of help depending on what your playstyle is. And then the last actual skill here is AA Gunner, which increases the AA damage and flak damage. And there is no enhanced effect here, so it's just really the continuous AA damage is increased by 10%, as well as the flak damage also does an additional 10% damage. Now moving on to the tier 3 ones here, so this is starting off with the armor piercing battleship, which I'm going to be honest, this is I guess more of a trap. Yeah, I'd say it's probably more of a sort of trap skill, so to get people to waste a skill point here. So what this will do is it will increase the shell damage at the expense of fire and flood recovery time, and I'm going to be honest, it really doesn't seem like a skill you'd really want to use, as you only really do an additional 5% damage. However, the fire and flooding duration is increased by 30%, and yeah, that's just something that you're really not going to want to take, because at the end of the day, if you've got floods and fires lasting for 30% longer, and in a game where you've got quite a few ships that set fires quite a lot, and there's also usually a lot of actual, destroyers going around, if you get hit by one of those and you're flooding and your damage control party's out for quite a bit, you're going to be losing a hell of a lot more HP. So the sort of risk to reward, the ratio there really just, yeah, I wouldn't particularly take that, but I guess, I mean, it really depends on your actual playstyle, but I wouldn't really advise taking it. Now, the next skill here is the secondary armament ballistician, which increases the secondary battery range and increases it by 20%. And unfortunately, there is no enhanced effect, so I mean, that'd be quite good if you had, say, a special German captain, and then you got an even further firing range, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen here. And then Adrenaline Rush, I mean, description, yeah, I just broke down Adrenaline Rush because, again, it's just Adrenaline Rush, so it increases the ship's parameters for each 1% HP lost, and for the base effect, so every % of HP you lose, your main battery, torpedo tube, and secondary battery reload time is reduced by 0.2%, and your continuous AA damage is increased by 0.2%. And then the enhanced effect, so the same thing, but instead of it being instead of it being you get a reduced time of 0.2, you get a reduced time of 0.25%, and the same thing with the damage. Instead of gaining 0.2% damage, you get 0.25%. Now, the survivability expert, this reduces the fire and flooding recovery time. So the time of modular player, firefighting and recovery from flooding is reduced by 15%, but there is no enhanced version of this. Steady, which is just generally a new one, which could actually be quite good for cruisers with no torpedo protection, actually. But unfortunately, this is battleships, so that's not going to happen. But I mean, anything that's already got ridiculously high torpedo protection, then you can just buff that even more or if it's something that you'd like to increase and is quite low, again, it'd be quite useful. But it just reduces the damage that torpedoes do to your ship by 10%. And then the last skill, which is AA Gunner's Training Expert, which increases the damage in priority AA sector, and the continuous damage in the priority AA sector is increased by 25%. And as well as that, they've also made a change to that, meaning that you'll actually get an additional flak explosion for every salvo whilst the actual priority sector is active. And finally, we've got the tier 4 skills, and we've got a few here. So the first one is Marksman, which increases the accuracy of main battery guns if there are no visible enemy ships within the ship's base detectability radius. So it's going to be sort of better for, I guess, long range shots. I mean, obviously, if you've got a destroyer in there, then it's not going to take effect, but then, you know, that's pretty much fine. Well, no visible enemy ships, I guess, so destroyers, if they're not being spotted, you will still be okay, but yeah, I think that is definitely going to be for the sort of longer range targets, and I think, especially on guns such as the Kansas, it may work, but the problem is because the detectability range is also ridiculously high, that's not going to work, so you're going to have to be really sitting at the back of the map, and it may only really take effect at the start of the game. But I guess we'll just have to see how that takes effect, but that will reduce the maximum dispersion of the main battery shells by 10%, so overall, I mean, yeah, it seems like, I guess, a good skill, but it really depends on the ship you're in and your playstyle. Like, let's say you're a person that really likes brawling battleships, that's not really going to be a ship that will, a skill that will really affect you too much, or at least benefit you too much. Now, the next one, which is Close Quarters Expert, this reduces the secondary battery dispersion. And the actual effect of it is that the maximum dispersion of shells for the secondary armament when a priority target is manually indicated means that the dispersion will be reduced by 35%. However, I believe it used to be like 65% or something like that. So, yeah, that is quite a nerf, really, to that skill. And I mean, I've already sort of stated my thoughts on another video there, but I mean, I think we're just going to have to wait for Wargaming to see if they actually change that. Now, the next one is the Armament Reload Expert, which this reduces the main battery reload time when an enemy is detected within the firing range of the secondary armament. And this is a very good skill, I guess, more for brawling than anything, because obviously, if you've got someone in your base secondary, is it? Oh, it's not even within the base range, is it? It's just within the firing range. So actually, yeah, that's going to be very good if you've got someone in your secondary range, then that's going to reduce. Well, I've not even explained what it does, but so yeah, the effect of that, it reduces the main battery reload time by 10%, and it's also got a passive effect which reduces the secondary battery reload time. Now, that's always going to affect the secondary batteries because as soon as they start firing, they're going to then get a 10% reload reduction. So, I mean, when a ship's outside the secondary battery range, then they're not going to be firing anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but it's going to be quite good for you shooting anything within your main battery. Well, within basically, it's going to be good for brawling, is what I'm trying to get with that skill there. And then the next one, which is the Emergency Repair Expert, this increases the damage control party and repair party consumable duration. So, this is going to be more of a survivability skill here. So, the action time of the damage control party and repair party consumables is increased by 10%, and as well as that, you also get an additional damage control party and repair party consumable. And this is going to be especially good for some of the ships that have actually got a limited number of damage control parties, such as, say, the Lenin and the, I don't know how you say it, but it's like the October Revolution, whatever. It's the tier 5 Russian battleship, as well as any other ships that have got a limited number. But as well as that, it's also just generally good to get another repair party consumable as well. Now, the next one, Concealment Expert, this has not had a name change, and that just reduces the ship's detectability range, and it reduces it by 10%. So I guess that's a survivability skill, as well as I guess it sort of helps you become more stealthy depending on what ship you're in. So let's say you're in a Conqueror, you can get the actual, yeah, you can get pretty low when you're using the Concealment Expert, as well as the actual upgrade for it as well. You can get it down to like 11k or something like that. So quite a useful skill depending on the ship you're on, but yeah, that's just as it was before. And Fire Prevention Expert, nothing's really changed here either. It just reduces the chance of setting of your ship setting fire and the number of fires that can be set on your ship. So yeah, it reduces the chance of catching fire by 10% and reduces the number of fires on the ship. So it'll go down from 4 maximum fires down to 3. So it's sort of a survivability build. Now, as I said earlier, after I've actually gone through all of these skills, I would then go to the actual speculative build. So I do have another sheet here, so we go over to sheet 2 here, and you can see I've got a few builds. So I've got sort of the title of it, so what it is, so secondary, survival, anti-air, and general. But what I've done here is effectively just gotten these skills which would be specific to this kind of build, And then, I guess at that point, depending on what your playstyle is, you can then mix and match with the actual skill points. So, here we've got all the skills you take for a secondary build, and then you've got remaining points. So then, let's say you wanted to put additional points into anti-air, for example, then you'd still have a few points spare for that, or maybe some survivability as well. Because if you're doing a secondary build, you're probably going to be doing sort of brawling, so you'd want to have something to, I guess, reduce the number of fires set, or say the damage control party and repair party. So it just sort of gives you, I guess, a little bit of room to sort of mix and match, which is, I guess, what this new rework allows for anyway, is for you to. There's not so many sort of set in builds, you can sort of mix and match and do what you really like. So for the secondary build, so I mean, I have actually covered this in another video as well at some point where I did it based on the old skill points where they sort of, well, this is the original spreadsheet, but this is sort of for the new spreadsheet, but I've just got all the different builds here anyway. So for secondary, so I've gone with the Threshing, Secondary Armament Ballistician, and Close Quarters Expert, as well as Armament Reload Expert. So I'll just sort of talk through those. I mean, I've already gone through the actual effects here. So, I mean, Threshing, that's just basically IFHE. And my reasoning for this is just, well, it's an optional skill. So, depending on what you really want from a ship, this may be used if you wish for more penetration from your secondaries. But it will also reduce the main armament fire chances. So, if you're using a ship which you also set like lots of fires, I mean, obviously the Conqueror or Thunderer you don't really use for secondary builds, but other ships, if they've got a pretty high fire chance and you rely on that quite a bit, then you'd probably not want to go for this. But if you're going for, say, a ship that's not really dependent on fires and you mainly fire armor piercing, but you've also got quite a few secondaries, then you're probably going to want to also go for that as well if they've not got the best actual shell penetration. Now, for secondary armament ballistician, so it just really extends the firing range. I mean, yeah, reasoning here. So, again, it's pretty standard for a secondary build, and you're always going to want to actually increase your secondary battery range. So, I mean, that's pretty self explanatory. And Close Quarters Expert, so this is one of the 4-point skills here, and that reduces the actual secondary battery dispersion by 35%. And yeah, so reasoning here. So, although much less than the previous skill, you still want to reduce dispersion as best as you can. I mean, if you can reduce it even just by a bit, you'd rather do that than just not at all when you're not going to really be hitting many of your shots. And then the last skill here, so that's another 4-point skill here, which is just that, well, this is the sort of brawling skill as well. So when a ship gets within your secondary battery range, the secondaries will reload 10% faster, and as well as the main batteries will reload by 10% faster as well. And yeah, just reasoning. So doubles up, good for brawling as well as reload. Because when brawling, main armament reload is reduced, as well as the affected one being a reduced reload of secondary batteries. And then, so when you've actually chosen all these, you have still got another 8 skill points here that you can choose. So you've still got quite a bit of room to, I guess, sort of work out what you'd really want from a ship and how you'd really want it built. Because obviously each ship's got its own different parameters, and for secondary, so they're all quite different. So that's just going to give you a bit of room for what you want to choose with that as well. Now, for the survival build, this also is using the same amount of skill points as you've got 8 left. And what you're going to go for here, or at least sort of a rough guide here, is to go for the first is a 1-point skill, which is Emergency Repair Specialist, which reduces the reload time of damage control and repair party consumables. So the reason you'd really want that is, again, you can, I guess, repair and also stop any fires and flooding a lot quicker. Well, not a lot quicker, but I mean, if you can get a reduction in that speed, then that's just going to be good in general. Because I mean, sometimes you sort of mashing your R key or your T key to repair or stop a fire or something as you're nearly dead, and sometimes that could be sort of the difference between you living and dying, and then obviously being able to repair up and last, say, another few minutes. So that's something that's going to be good for a survival build, so you'll just last for longer. And then the next one is also a tier 1 skill, which is Maintenance Specialist. And so yeah, my reasoning here, so not so much a survivability skill, but, well, apart from the steering and engine, but it will allow you to keep fighting more effectively. Say your main and secondary armaments will be, they won't be knocked out as much if someone's really aiming for them. So if you're fighting someone with, say, similar HP to you and they're knocking out your guns, then obviously you're not going to be able to deal as much damage, and there's a chance that they'll be able to sort of out DPM you. But with that skill, then things aren't going to get knocked out as fast, meaning that you can then still get a sort of higher amount of damage out. And overall, I guess sort of unintentionally, I guess, it will allow you to survive for longer because you'll be able to take targets out quite quickly. And then the next skill, it actually jumps up to a 3-point skill, which is Survivability Expert. I've not actually spelled that correctly, but yeah. So again, just allows you to stay alive for longer. So modular repair, firefighting, recovery from flooding is reduced by 15%. So, yep, what I put as reasoning. So you'll take less damage from fires and floods, therefore you will survive longer. And again, as well as that, so modular repair, I guess that would be the skill above that I was just talking about, maintenance specialist. The same applies with that too. And then the fourth, concealment expert, so that's more just to stay alive. Yeah, being spotted less will help a lot with that a lot, because obviously if you're not spotted, no one can really shoot you unless you've just gone unspotted and someone gets a speculative shot and hits you. But, you know, the game is really about spotting and, I guess, information. So if you're not able to be shot at, then obviously you're not going to take damage unless torpedoes, you know, from destroyers. But yeah, again, that will just help you stay alive a little bit more. And then the last one, which is fire prevention expert. And again, yeah, reduction with fires and the amount of fires. So, you know, that's again, just going to keep you alive for longer because you're not going to take as much fire damage because it lasts less. And also there's going to be less maximum fires. You know, let's say you get perma-fired and, you know, you're being absolutely spammed by, say, a Thunder or a Conqueror or something. That's just going to reduce the amount of fires you can have set on your ship. Now, for the anti-air build, this isn't really, I guess, a build. It's more just the specific skills for it. There's only two here, which is AA Gunner and AA Gunner's Training Expert. So for the 2-point skill, it just increases the continuous AA damage as well as 10% damage for the actual flak explosions. And yeah, reasoning. So for an AA build, you want to have additional AA and flak damage. So I mean, for example here, so this is only a 5 points here. So let's say you're going with a secondary build, but you're no longer getting the anti-air benefits that you would have done previously. You've got 5 skill points here, so that still leaves you with 3. So you could also mix and match here to actually get that. So, you know, that goes with any of them. And then the second one here, which is just the AA Gunner's Training Expert. So that's just, you know, the priority sector. And again, you'll be using the priority AA when you're being attacked by planes the most. And that will be very useful to have as a temporary boost in firepower. So that's just really more a specific AA. Yeah, just the AA specific skills here. So it's not really a build because 2 captain skills isn't really a build, but I guess more just of what you'd want to have if you're sort of mix and matching. And then the last point here, I've got sort of general skills. So again, this is what you can use for mix and matching depending on what you're going with. So I've gone for loader, which, you know, is, you know, switching shell types once you've fully reloaded. And yeah, reasoning. So it's generally a good skill to take depending on what you're going with, especially if you're sort of switching between shell types. Let's say you've got something that's got like a high fire chance, but also has got very power armor piercing. You're going to want to sort of switch between those quickly. So generally quite a good one. And for gunner, you know, main battery traverse speed of, you know, 20% or 25%. So again, good ship skill to take, especially with slow turret traverse ships. So such as the Kremlin or the Yamato or something. That's going to be very useful depending on what you're really going with. Argoside. So, I mean, it depends on really how you play. If you don't rely on it, then obviously that's good because you can then use those 2 skill points for something else. But depending on your playstyle, then this is going to be just a good general skill to have. Adrenaline Rush, I mean, it's Adrenaline Rush, and so that again, really based on playstyle. So, yeah, so the ship you're taking as well, so it really depends on what you're going with. But again, it's just a sort of a good general skill to have in your build. And then for the second class, which is Emergency Repair Expert. So this is just, you know, the damage control and repair party consumables last a little bit longer. And it's just going to be a good skill to have, especially when brawling, or even if just you find you die quite fast or you take quite a bit of fire, you know, you're just going to want to have these as just sort of additional benefits. So again, good general skill. And then the last one, Marksman. It really depends on what it is. I mean, if you've got a sort of a long range sort of fighter, I guess, so, you know, you're shooting sort of 25k away, that's going to be very good because, I mean, a 10% reduction in shell dispersion is, you know, very nice to have, especially when coupled with the actual upgrades to go with to reduce that. Then I just think that will be just a very good skill to have as well, depending on what you're really playing with and as well as your playstyle. And I mean, if you were to, I mean, it is quite an odd selection, that's why it's just in a section of its own. But I mean, even with these, you'd have another 5 skill points left. So that's really it for this, I guess, captain build video. I mean, if there's anything else you want me to cover in the sort of preceding ones, because we're going to be doing one for cruisers, destroyers, and carriers. But I guess this is just sort of the first of the next, well, first of 4, and just giving it a go with to what to really cover. So I've tried making this as sort of short as possible. But obviously, you know, if I did all 4 in one video, it would be way too long. So if I split these out, it makes it a little bit short. But I think this is going to be kind of long now. But, you know, if you've got any feedback for how you found this and anything you want me to add in the future to the next ones, then let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, just sort of leave a like, as I say, that does really help with the actual algorithm and my channel sort of gets found by more people. But that's pretty much it from me. So if you found this useful, then I'm glad you've enjoyed it and it's been useful. And thank you very much for watching. So I'll see you in the next one.